Hey, welcome to the Sunday live stream. How you guys doing? It is Father's Day. Happy Father's Day. It is also Juneteenth. So if you follow Juneteenth, happy Juneteenth. If you are just hanging around doing nothing, I'm going to be here for about an hour. Um, I guess we'll go through this book, Fire in the Dark: Men and Gods by Jack Donovan. If you just want to sit back and if you want to engage, you can. If not, that's fine too. But I was just I was reading this book and came across um, Donovan's perspective on fathers, and so I decided to go through that. And that's going to be today's topic. So it might take an hour, it may take 30 minutes, who knows? But hello, top dog, what up? How you doing? So I have not finished with the book yet. I've had it a couple of days now, and he basically, I think I said this in a previous video, he recontextualizes um, some classic books on mythology in a more, what he considers a more masculine way. And it wasn't really until he mentioned it that I noticed how King, Warrior, Magician, Lover kind of, they do hide because they are psychologists. Those men are psychologists, and the psychology departments are very, very careful when it comes to male psychology. They get very skittish and they push towards certain modalities, certain thought patterns. And it really becomes obvious when you talk about the warrior in the King, Warrior, Magician, Lover quartet that they are very uncomfortable with male violence, very uncomfortable with violence in any and every way. So Jack Donovan decided to sort of take apart um, some of it, take out some of the bad parts and insert some of the good parts. Jack Donovan is one of my favorite writers when it comes to male psychology and masculine um, ideology. I guess you could say he's not really a red pill guy, but it's really engaging thought, and he does decent research. And he does a really good job of saying, hey, this is the good thing about this stuff, but at the same time, it's paused because this guy is, you know, usually they're some version or flavor of feminist, and they're writing for a mass audience that's supposed to include men and women. So, and plus, a lot of psychology departments today in colleges are mostly female. So if you write a psych book that is for men, you're excluding women, and that's negative to them. When who should be the prime target for a book on men except men? Like I don't read books on female psychology and expect to have my feelings spared, but women do. So there that goes. But I have read books on feminine psychology as well. It was a it was a female feminist writer who wrote a book. It was another book on it was on psychology and mythology, and it was like the hero within, the heroine within, or something like that. It's like two different books, one for men, one for women, and a lot of the women ones, it was very feminist in writing, and it was embarrassingly stupid in terms of its analysis. But that's basically where it comes from in this book. So it's not going to be. Uh, I saw um, uh, Professor Geek. He stole my idea. Basically, he did it before I did. I was going to do fictional fathers, like good fictional fathers, but he took the idea and actually did a lot better with it than I would have. So I don't feel like I should do it. I'm just going to chill and do something different. So, uh, ooh, it is hot here, and I have to turn the fans off in order to do this. So we're definitely going to get done with this pretty quickly. But Jack Donovan, um, I just want to read this chapter here. Well, this little bit right here on fatherhood. He says, when a man is still a boy, he looks upward to his father as an exemplar. His father represents an ideal of a man that towers above him and seems far beyond him. To a female child, the father figure demonstrates what a man is, and what a man does, and how a man behaves. The father figure shows the male child something about himself, about what he is. To a boy, the father figure is aspirational and signals the direction of his destiny, gestures at what he is and what he is in some way bound in time to become. The small and fragile child looks upward and imagines himself growing as tall and becoming as strong as his father, and one day becoming a father in his own right. The father figure, notice he added the word figure here, is a boy's first God, ordering and overseeing the household world of the child. He provides and protects and acts as the final arbiter of justice. Traditionally, a man's wife and children took his name, and some sense the identity of the family orbited around the identity of the father. So this is kind of what the first strike that feminism took from you, is the idea that women don't have to take your last name. I mean, beyond the fact that you shouldn't even get married, which I don't know if you guys know anything about that. We should probably talk about that. That was one of the first things that feminism came up with, is that women shouldn't get married to men. And there was a a society called the Society for Cutting Up Men, and they dropped what was called the Scum Manifesto. I'm trying to find it. Um, I want to be able to find the Scum Manifesto, because it's all about breaking up households, um, because they view motherhood and sex and all this kind of stuff as things that is anti-woman and things that are enslaving women. So I'm trying to find the exact language here. I'm pretty sure I had it. It might have been on a different SIM card or something, but I had it somewhere. But that was that was one of them. There was another one. I think it was called the Red Letter, or something. It was just a whole lot of different feminist societies that dedicated themselves to the destruction of the nuclear family, the destruction of relationships between men and women, and and of course, if you end up getting married, you shouldn't take your husband's name, because doing that means that he owns you, and you lose who you are. So then you get a lot of these women out here who they will get married, but they end up keeping their own names, and which really kind of defeats the purpose, because now you have the children with hyphenated names, or you got a family where people in the family have different names, and which is kind of defeats the purpose of of families. The book was called Awakening the Heroes Within, and there's another one for women called Awakening the Heroine Within. It's trash, by the way. Again, it's very feminist and not helpful to anybody. It's a lot of the same garbage you probably would have picked up and read anywhere. I'm certainly still looking for the Scum Manifesto, so I could find. A lot of people haven't read that, believe it or not. A lot of people are not that familiar with feminist writing, and I'm telling you, it's really ugly stuff, like really ugly stuff. And it's a lot of it is just very, especially some of the, I don't know what they call it, second wave feminism, um, and it's very strange. I definitely will. I definitely tell my old man that y'all wished him a happy Father's Day. I'm pretty sure he'll just be happy that people recognize that he still exists. He's that kind of guy. Um, he didn't want to do anything. He just wanted like some KFC. Like that was his to him, that's what mattered. What mattered was that he got Kentucky Fried Chicken. That mattered. So that's all he wanted. That's what he got. Don't ask me why. don't ask me why he was thinking about that, but he did. When it came time for dinner, and it's very strange in that regard. We thought, hey, big dinner, maybe barbecue or something like that. He just, nope. He was wanting KFC. So there it is, KFC, and I left it at that. What more do you want me to do? Um, so when we see it was interesting because this reminds me of the episode of The Simpsons where Bart gets older and he doesn't become exactly like Homer, but he's not much better than Homer. Where he's also a bum who lives in he got a crappy house and a crappy family, and I don't think he even had a family. He's done a lot of different episodes of The Simpsons where Bart grows up, and most of them have Lisa doing very well. She's the president, or um, she's basically having to take care of Bart because Bart's a big fat loser, and that's basically showing that Homer is the model for Bart, and it doesn't turn out very well for him in terms of him being successful or being an individual who can survive on his own. So you can tell, and you often see things like criminality, certain negative behaviors that sons repeat that their fathers did. So you do see that the father plays a very important role, despite the fact that society now tries to diminish the role of fathers. It's quite embarrassing, actually. And it says something that our society is so paused that is seen as something positive. That's seen as something to work towards, is to destroy fatherhood. It's kind of goofy if you ask me. So I'm just going to put Scum Manifesto in. Yes, Valerie Solanas. That was the name of the young lady who wrote the Scum Manifesto, and she ended up stabbing somebody. So they tell you that they don't hate men, but when they write books, the books are about hating men, and then when they attack people, they attack men. So this was from 1968. So you could definitely, it's easy to find online. And I'm going to try to find some of the important parts here. Because a lot of people have been covering up for feminist and feminist violence for a long time. I mean, the whole shit is called the Society for Cutting Up Men. And then here's what she wrote. The male is completely egocentric, trapped inside himself, incapable of empathizing or identifying with others, of love, friendship, affection, or tenderness. He is a completely isolated unit, incapable of rapport with anyone. His responses are entirely visceral, not cerebral. His intelligence is a mere tool in the service of his drives and needs. He is incapable of mental passion, mental interaction. He can't relate to anything other than his own physical sensations. He is a half dead, unresponsive lump, incapable of giving or receiving pleasure or happiness. Consequently, he is at best an utter bore, an inoffensive blob, since only those capable of absorption in others can be charming. He is trapped in a twilight zone halfway between humans and apes, and is far worse off than the apes because, unlike the apes, he is capable of a large array of negative feelings: hate, jealousy, contempt, disgust, guilt, shame, doubt, and moreover, he is aware of what he is and what he isn't. Could you imagine writing something like that and replace the word male with, let's say, black people? Replace the word male with tranny or something, and then say the same things. What do you think how people would react? But this is hilarious. She continues by saying, being an incomplete female, the male spends his life attempting to complete himself, to become female. He attempts to do this by constantly seeking out, fraternizing with, and trying to live through and fuse with the female, and by claiming as his own all female characteristics Emotional strength and independence, forcefulness, dynamism, decisiveness, coolness, objectivity, assertiveness, courage, integrity, vitality, intensity, depth of character, grooviness, and injecting onto women all male traits: vanity, frivolity, triviality, weakness. It should be said, though, that the male has only one glaring area of superiority over the woman: public relations. He is he has done a brilliant job of convincing millions of women that men are women and women are men. The woman who wrote this is named Valerie Solanas. This is called the Scum Manifesto. It was taught in colleges and it's still taught in schools. This is still taught in schools. There have been YouTube channels that have said less about women and been demonetized and kicked off. Uh, but this stuff is perfectly fine. This is progressivism 101. And this was in 1968. This was in 1968 where she wrote this. So, and you want to know what she thinks about stuff? She says this: there is no human reason for money or for anyone to work. She What will liberate women, therefore, from male control is the total elimination of the money work system, not the attainment of economic equality with men within it. Oh boy. Unable to give love or affection, the male gives money. It makes him feel motherly. The mother gives milk, he gives bread. He is the breadwinner. She wrote this in 1968. She also attacked somebody and almost killed them. But you've never heard of this woman, have you? Most people have never heard of her. So here's what I really wanted to get to, though. The effect of fatherhood on males specifically is to make them men, that is, highly defensive of all impulses to passivity, faggotry, and of desires to be female. Every boy wants to imitate his mother, be her, fuse with her, but daddy forbids this. He is the mother. He gets to fuse with her. So he tells the boy, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, to not be a sissy, to act like a man. The boy, scared shitless of and respecting, quote unquote, his father, complies and becomes just like daddy, the model of manhood, the all American ideal, the well behaved heterosexual dullard. The effect of fatherhood on females is to make them dependent, passive, domestic, animalistic, nice, insecure, approval, and security seekers, cowardly, humble, respectful of authorities and men, closed, not fully responsive, half dead, trivial, dull, conventional, flattened out, and thoroughly contemptible. Daddy's girl, always tense and fearful, uncool, unanalytical, lacking objectivity, appraises daddy and therefore other men against a background of fear or respect, and is not only unable to see the empty shell behind the aloof facade, but accepts the male definition of himself as superior as a female and of herself as inferior as a male, which, thanks to daddy, she really is. It is the increase of fatherhood resulting from the increase and more widespread affluence that fatherhood needs in order to thrive that has caused the general increase of mindlessness and the decline of women in the United States since the 1920s. The close association of affluence with fatherhood has led, for the most part, to only the wrong girls, namely the privileged middle class girls, getting educated. The effect of fathers, in sum, has been to corrode the world with maleness. The male has a negative Midas touch. Everything he touches turns to shit. This is the crazy chick that attacked Andy Warhol. And that's what she said about men. That's what she said about men. I wish more men read books written by crazy women, because this sort of thing is not uncommon. It's uncommon to be that visceral, but she got those ideas from somewhere, right? it's it's very interesting that she says that. So here's Jack Donovan. If the Father is the boy's first God, to understand the Father and become a man himself, he must look beyond the person of his own Father to conceptualize a higher ideal of what it means to be a man and a father. He cannot merely imitate his own father forever. He must conceptualize an ideal of what it means to be a father above and beyond his own father, an ethereal and eternal father, one father to rule them all, in all father. Uh, yeah, the negative Midas touch is pretty funny. That's the thing. That's the thing about reading this stuff is you can get offended if you want, but there's no reason to get offended. This lady, I don't know. I don't know if she's still alive or not, but she wrote this almost 40 years before I was born. So she was a nut. But the thing is, she's a nut, and her ideas were allowed to continue to be pushed in society. You know, I remember one day I actually went on like Reddit or something like that, and I tried to find somebody who would uh, who would say that these things that this woman is saying is negative. But what they'll do is they'll give you the old progressive. Well, she's from a minority group and she's punching up. And when you're feeling oppressed, it's okay to feel this way. And it's absolutely nonsensical. The stuff that she's saying really doesn't make much sense. And if you were a smart person, you really wouldn't take what she's saying that seriously. The issue is that she is being taken seriously, and this crap was being pushed onto children, even boys, when they were in college. This is why I always, I don't know if y'all remember the days of the intellectual dark web of like the Weinsteins and Peterson and Joe Rogan and all them. I was like, they're useless. You know, a lot of them are disaffected liberals anyway, like the Weinsteins. Um, and that doesn't do you any good. Secondly, so many of them, this stuff is so old that many of them went through college believing some of this crap, hearing some of this crap, and didn't pay it any attention. It wasn't until it came for their field of expertise that they started saying anything. You know, for instance, the Weinsteins, I believe, are biologists. So when it came into the biology department, that's when all of a sudden they had a problem with it. They didn't have a problem with it the whole time it was there for 30 years before they got to their position. You know, when they probably heard this stuff in college, they wasn't thinking of it. But then as soon as it's coming knocking on their door, all of a sudden, wait a minute, it's a problem. And that's why I say like they're useless. The real people who are against this kind of stuff are furious the moment they hear it and actually actively want to do something about it, not just passively complain about it on a podcast in long term. I use this stuff to educate though. It doesn't matter whether you do anything or not. I just want you to know this is what people think. All right. That's just what I just want you to know this is what people was thinking. I'm trying to find another. Here is Jack Donovan. He's going to sound a little bit Jordan Peterson-esque here. The primary function of the Father is to contend with conceptual chaos. Characterized by logos, he uses reason to put the world in order and to maintain that order. The Father orients the world around the fire. He is not the fire, but conceptually he is close to it. He creates the point of reference and defines the perimeter. Within that perimeter, he is the final authority, although the earthbound Father defers to the cosmic Father, to his own highest ideal of what it means to be a father. He acts as a representative of the sun and of all that the sun represents as men. The bright light of the sun reveals truth, and the solar Father on the earth does his best to order his world in accordance with a sense of truth that is as close to being eternal and in harmony with his understanding of what is right as he is able to conceive. As such, his struggle is with concepts, with meanings and ideas. He acts as the primary determiner of names and narratives. He shapes the perception of reality around him by arranging, classifying, and evaluating animals, objects, actions, emotions, experiences, and thoughts. The Father creates hierarchies of meaning and value, and oversees them to maintain their integrity. So what he means here, because I know I kind of skipped the beginning part of the book where he's talking about the fire. So basically, he uses what Mircea Eliade calls the sacred and the profane. So the sacred and the profane is how things become religious symbols or whatever. And the difference between the sacred and the profane is that when something stands out, it becomes sacred. You know, you walk through a desert, all of a sudden there's a stream. People then start saying that the stream is sacred or whatever because they have never seen one before. They don't know what it means. They don't know what it means. Certain rocks, like I just found out that certain religions will have like special rocks or whatever. But the favorite is like the church house. You build a church on a plot of land. The church now becomes a beacon of light. It becomes the axis mundi, or the center of the world. So what Jack Donovan is talking about is the creation of fire. Like if you were a caveman and you created fire, fire creates light. And then you're going to become the master in mastering fire. You become the master of light. You create warmth. You're going to maintain the fire, and everything that you can't see is going to be outside of the perimeter of the light. And so conceptual chaos is outside of in that darkness. That's wild animals, other men, other types of threats, ecological threats or whatever. And if you're the Father, the guy who lit the fire, who created the centerpiece of the universe in this particular world, it's your job to maintain the fire and to protect the fire. So that's why he uses the word fire. That's why the book is called Fire in the Dark. Because it's about men finding fire, creating fire, and building around fires. He's basically thinking about it in terms of cavemen. But you could take the idea and say it's a house. The house is the same concept. People used to build their homes near streams and brooks and beds of water for very specific reasons, so they won't have to travel and look for water. So that's basically what he's saying. So he's saying like, this is what the Father does, and that's the purpose of the Father. But this is going to be very interesting too. Let's go back to the Scum Manifesto real quick, because y'all seem to have fun with this. Although he wants to be an individual, the male is scared of anything in himself that is the slightest bit different from other men. It causes him to suspect he is not really a man, that he is passive and totally sexual, a highly upsetting suspicion. If other men are A and he's not, he must not be a man. He must be a fag. So he tries to confirm his manhood by being like all the other men. Differentness in other men as well as in himself threatens him. It means they're fags, whom he must be at all costs avoid. So he tries to make sure that all other men conform. So she's talking about conformity. Now this is the issue that we have, of course, today, where men are wearing dresses, men are painting their fingernails. There was a thing even when I was a kid about men having long hair, men having earrings and that sort of thing. Over time, we've been able to overcome a lot of that stuff, but typically you've probably heard when you were a kid that that men shouldn't have earrings or men shouldn't have long hair. I think that's even in the Bible that men shouldn't have long hair. I believe it's also in the Quran. Men shouldn't have long hair. So there is some truth, and Ross is saying that there is some truth in what she just said. But you're talking about a small subsection of men who thought that way. The larger subsection of men don't really think about things in those terms, especially considering we've always had men that look weird. So conformity is a good point. That being said, though, conformity is necessary. It's a necessary component of being in a group. Now, being different is everybody's different. Everybody's an individual. Nobody's exactly the same. So the idea that men are afraid of differentness is like not entirely. This is where you get the American Psycho. I think somebody mentioned it earlier, where every man in the movie essentially looks the same, right? It's all a white male. They all look like Ken dolls. They can't even tell each other apart, you know. And they all have business cards, and they're noticing the slightest differences in the business card, you know. So I forget who wrote the book. I've actually heard that the movie is better than the book. I haven't read the book myself, but that's what American Psycho was getting to when it comes to middle class conformity of what they call homosexual reproduction, in terms of all of these people looking the same, talking the same, being the same, essentially. And that typically happens in office spaces where where people are allowed to hire folks who are just like them. You see that a lot with women now. A lot of the women will just go and hire other women who look just like them, who have the same temperament, just as they do. That's how a lot of these companies. So you have what's the name? It skipped my mind. AJ3 says it's American Psycho, the one that had Christian Bale in it, because there are two American Psychos. Well, I only know one movie with Christian Bale in it. I don't know the other one. There's a second movie. There's a second form of that movie. I only know the first one. But so when it comes to conformity, she has a bit of a point. And Jack Donovan talks about conformity in other books, but he talks about it in terms of expectations for men and for men and boys, and that you have to set expectations in order for people to meet and achieve them. And I actually agree with that. There is going to be a certain level of conformity. It's a certain level of conformity when it comes to women too. A lot of relational violence from females comes from people who are different, towards people who are different. The thing about this stuff is that people don't like folks who are not like them, typically. So you'll see a lot of that stuff. There's in groups and out groups. There's the girls who had tattoos and nose rings and black lipstick. They didn't fit in with the cheerleaders and all that kind of stuff. So when you look at traditionally girly girls, you're looking at like the Barbie dolls, and then they will shun the golf girls who are fishnets and boots. All the girls who look like Daria, they'll shun all those girls, which was an interesting thing when it comes to Daria as a TV show, because it had her sister, who was essentially a bubbly, airheaded teenager. And I think her sister was even blonde on that show. It was like, how do you have a blonde child and a brunette child? I don't know. But that was an interesting dynamic for that show. I don't remember much about Daria, though. But I remember that being an interesting thing that even noticed me even when I was a kid, that they visually don't even match. So it's like, how can they be sisters? They don't even match, like, visually. And they don't even match their parents. Last time I checked, I think their parents even look different. So this was very useful. I'm not gonna. So this is what Jack Donovan says. In everyday life, men sometimes prefer to believe that the men who they follow or admire simply are what they are, and they always know exactly the right thing to say or do. This is a pleasant illusion, and leaders often project this because it is what many people want to believe, and believing it makes people feel better. While some men do just know the right ways to resolve difficult situations, if the situation is truly extraordinary, of the matter is grave, or the matter is of grave importance, any conscientious leader will think more than twice about the problem and question himself and struggle with all the variables and potential outcomes before he makes his decision. He will have to work through some turmoil. There are, of course, innumerable records of father gods and kings struggling with difficult decisions. But take an example from Homer's Iliad. Sarpedon, one of Zeus's sons by a mortal woman, so he was a mortal demigod, not unlike Heracles or others. When Zeus realized that Sarpedon, fighting for Troy, was about to be killed by Patroclus, fighting in the armor of Achilles, he considered sweeping his son from the battlefield and dropping him back in his homeland in Elysia. Hera reminded him that the other deathless gods had their own children engaged in battle, and that if he whisked away his own son, he would set a precedent encouraging any of them to do so. If any god could snatch up one of his children at any time, the battle would become almost comically ridiculous, with heroes constantly disappearing in the midst of battle. Whenever another fighter got the upper hand, bravery and triumph would be rendered meaningless without risk. Zeus agreed that his son would have to die to preserve order among the gods, but he, quote, showered tears of blood and drenched the earth. So this is about making difficult decisions, about when as a father, you have to make a decision to, I don't want to use the word sacrifice your child, but that's kind of what it is, right? And you typically see this situation happen quite a bit in criminal justice scenarios where mom will always be on TV saying he didn't do nothing, while dad is going to be a little more straightforward as he did the crime, he did the time, he needs to do the time. And we've even seen situations in which, dads have turned their sons over because they have like a strong sense of justice and you want to set an example. That's very important too. This is about what I was talking about earlier in terms of setting expectations. He uses Zeus, which is a really good example because Zeus was supposed to be the exemplar to the other guys. So he says, hey, if you start breaking the rules and not reaching your fullest potential and allowing things to play out, then other people won't do the same thing. So this goes back to her conception, Valerie's conception of conformity, that men try to push conformity. But it's all about setting a standards and having order, right? There needs to be a certain order to things. And what you see in terms of orderliness is orderliness works. I remember being a kid, and I forget who said it to me, but somebody said to me, it's like, you know what? You know who you never see on television having robbed a bank or mugged anybody, haven't gotten shot by the cops or anything like that? I'd be like, no, who? He said, I forget, I think it might have been a friend of mine. And he said, children whose dads and parents are in the Nation of Islam. You never see them kill anybody. You never see them rob anybody. You never see them in jail. People convert to Islam while they're in jail. They never convert to Islam and then go to jail. And I sat a couple of years thinking about that. This is why I started dabbling in being a Muslim. Because they create a conception of orderliness. It's definitely a cult, right? But when you look at it, look at how they approach everything. The men are very respectful, so are the women. It's all about family structure. The men recognize what they have to do and they go out and do it. The women recognize what they have to do and they go out and do it. There's some arguments, there's just human relations, but you never see their children falling off and ended up on television having robbed anybody or shot up anything. Sure, they think the white man is the devil, but they never actually attack them. Not unless they have to. They'll threaten to, but they'll never actually do it. And then you realize, that's a really strong family structure. And it's an ideal family structure. Even if it's not an ideal religion, it's an ideal family structure where the man has expectations His children. He knows his children are watching him. He wants his children in the same household as he's in. He knows his wife is relying on him. There are certain things that he must do, certain decisions he must make. Same thing with the mothers. And you say to yourself, that used to be the norm in society. It used to be the norm that men were expected to do things, women were expected to do things. And yeah, there's going to be an element of conformity to it. You weren't a real man if you didn't take care of your children. Never mind the earrings or the long hair or anything like that. You didn't take care. You're not a good provider. You're a bum. You're not a good man. Your children are unruly. You're not a good man. You're failing. And our society basically gave that up. So now it really only exists in really conservative pockets of society. And I know the Nation of Islam is kind of not really seen as being conservative, but it is. They have, I think, some left-wing economic policies, but socially they're very conservative. They don't even like rap music. Like a lot of them, despite the fact that there were some rappers who were in the Nation of Islam, like Ice Cube, most of them don't even like rap music. Rap music is haram anyway, if you want to be honest. Making rap music is also haram. I used to listen to a rapper named Freeway. He used to talk about that. How he struggled with making rap music because he was a devout Muslim. And that kind of stuff is haram, and he had to really struggle with that. But it was also the only way he could take care of himself and his kids, which is more important than at that particular point in time. But when you think about the social structure and how it's fallen apart, the option is to either have this extreme level of orderliness, which you can't really attain today because you're not going to get enough people to participate. And it's also a situation where public policy won't allow for it to hold either. Mainly because you can be divorced, quote unquote, without even getting married now. I mean, I'm hearing stories of guys who just lived with a girl for a year and a half, and all of a sudden she's entitled to half his shit. It's like, that's ridiculous. But that's done more damage to relationships than anything. It's been the family court system. People have been trying to dodge alimony and dodge child support and all this kind of stuff. But child support was created from an expectation. This is why you can't get rid of it. As much as I may rail against like the family court system, I have to recognize that child support was created out of a need because there were men who were getting girls pregnant and then leaving and just disappearing into the night. We've overcorrected on it, however, and now you don't even have to be the birth father of this child to be financially responsible for them forever. Nobody ever tells people that a birth certificate is a contract binding you to that child in perpetuity. Even if you found out 25 years later that child is not yours, you still are responsible for that child and was responsible for it, so you can't sue. But you also don't, in some places, you don't have the right to even try to find out if you were the father of that child. I believe this back from when I was, red pilling it up. They said in places like France, you can't DNA test a child. If you're the father, you can't DNA test a child because they view the sanctity of the family, which is basically the sanctity of the woman, as more important than your, let's say, ego in trying to make sure that the child that was born is yours. And I've heard that it's like 40% of guys in France. I've heard it's even higher in places like Haiti and Jamaica of illegitimate children, women who had babies out of wedlock, get a guy to agree to take care of this baby, thinking that the baby is his and it's not his. I heard it's pretty high. And it's pretty high in the United States too. How many people actually go and look it up though? Like the really sad stories is when the children get sick and you need a donor, you know, and that's when you find out that you're adopted, or that's how you find out that your dad is not your dad. That's not necessarily the best move, but it's happened to people. So that's definitely something that you can think of. It's an overcorrection of the system. Yeah, some of us had granddads who went across town and had a whole other family over there, and he just left her in the dump. And so now we got this thing called child support, where you are, financially mandated to take care of this child. But now we've overcorrected because now you're mandated to take care of a child, and it's not your child. It seems like in every other kind of contract, things are taken into account. Information asymmetry is taken into account. You know, like prenuptial agreements. Now, when you look at a prenup or something like that, if you give there was a story, it was several years ago. I remember we was talking about it on the All Hip Hop board of a guy who approached a woman with a prenup the day of the wedding. So he's basically said, if you don't sign this prenup, we're not getting married. So she signed the prenup. A year or so later, she filed for divorce. He said, well, we got a prenup. She claimed, well, I signed it under duress. I signed it because I didn't want you to not marry me. So the judge invalidated the prenup because she signed it under duress. If you lie, try to hide assets or whatever, that's going to invalidate the prenup. There's all different ways to invalidate prenuptial agreements. They're not sacrosanct contracts. But somehow that birth certificate is a sacrosanct contract. She could lie and say you're the father of that child. You believe it, sign it, and then 10 years later find out you're not. Whoops. The government's not going to take your name off of it. Your government's not going to take your name off of it. They're not going to say she has to pay you your money back. They're going to say, well, you are the legal father, even if you're not the blood father, which most people don't understand is a difference. All right. And that's very awful because there's a lot of lower income, lower IQ guys who get stuck with that stuff. Most guys, if they knock up a chicken head or something like that, they deny the child as theirs, but then they don't actually go to court and make sure. So they end up being default daddy. And that's very unfair, in terms of the situation is you can decide that a child is yours, or they can decide a child is yours just because you missed a court date. That's nasty. Yeah, nasty. But you're right. I do believe that contracts signed under duress shouldn't be taken into account. But nobody else takes that. Like if you are a kid and you really want to go to college, and somebody slides you a student loan contract, and they're like, look, unless you sign this student loan contract, you won't be able to pay to go to college. And then you sign it. You can't turn around and say, well, I signed it under duress. They're gonna be like, no, you signed it. You got to pay that money back. Like if you want to use under duress as an excuse to get out of a contract, okay, then almost all cell phone contracts should be under duress because most people need a cell phone in order to live, in order to stay in contact with your children or whatever. You can't argue, well, I signed this contract under duress. Why is it that that's the only contract that you could do that with? I signed this under duress. There's plenty of types of stressful situations. I mean, plea bargains. You can sign a plea bargain under duress and that can get thrown out, but that's about it. But that's because people fought to have those kinds of contracts challenged. And so if you signed a plea bargain and you didn't get a chance to go to sleep or get a chance to talk to an attorney or something like that, they can throw that out. That's fair. Same thing should happen to the birth certificate. If you're pressured to sign the contract and you didn't read it, you didn't have the opportunity to read it, you didn't get to blood test the child, you lied, she lied, I mean, that should avoid the contract. The contract should be based off of at least somewhat equal belief and understanding. Now, there are some guys who sign the birth certificate and they know that there's only a chance that they're the father. That's because they kind of want the girl and she cheated, but then she came back and she promised she'll never do it again. And then she's pregnant. And now you're like, well, somebody else could be the dad, but I'm pretty sure I'm the dad. And then you sign the contract. I mean, at that point, you're just an idiot, you know? But there's a lot of guys who don't know, have no idea, no earthly idea. And he truly believes that he's the father of that child. And then he finds out he's not. And he usually finds out when she blurts it out at him and yells at him about something, or he finds out she's cheating some other way. Aria says, yes, it's a really big issue in Jamaica. It's so hot that the Jamaican term is jacket. Plenty of women raise jackets in Jamaica. Plenty of men raise jackets. Oh, that's awful. That's awful, bro. That's awful. WG Field says society overprotects and overgive women. Yeah, but then when you have to realize this, and this is one of the things about masculine psychology and the red pill that people don't seem to understand, is that society is created to benefit women and children. So they're not going to create an equal family court. No, the point of the society is to protect women and children. That's what it exists for. That's what men go to war for. That's what, police officers are in the streets for. There's a lot of stories like that in which, a man is tricked into raising a child that's not his. WG Field's talking about one that's pretty famous one right there about a story of a billionaire who was actually infertile. There was, I mean, I use this documentary a lot. It's my favorite documentary I've ever seen. It's called Broke. And it explains why athletes go broke. And a lot of it is they go out and they bang strippers and chicks who bang other people for money, and they end up getting them pregnant, but they don't really want them. So then they end up getting raped through family court. And most of the time they do it to themselves. Half the time they don't even bother to DNA test the kid. They just either accept it and sign off, or they try to blow it off. And if I don't go to court, then there's nothing they can do. It's like, no, you're going to get a default judgment against you. You got to go, And sometimes, well, in almost all cases, you have to get the mother to agree to the DNA test. You can't just say, well, I'm the legal father. I can test this child if I want to. They'll be like, nope, can't do it. We'll invalidate it if you test the child yourself without the mother's consent, even though this is a separate thing outside the body. They will never let you test that baby by itself. Because imagine if a man could, he may see little wrinkles in the baby's face, and all of a sudden he's swabbing the inside of the mouth, and he's gonna get the baby tested himself. They'd be like, no, no, no. Now, in some places will let you do it, but there's a lot of places that won't. They won't let a single father or a man alone make the decision to DNA test their kid. So you got to look up the laws where you are in order to do that. But I know in some places you can't, and a lot of places you can't. And so that makes relationships very, very tricky. Makes people not want to be in a relationship. Yeah, Zion Williamson, he's a clown. I mean, but he did everything. The dude is what, 23 or something like that, 24. That's what they do. I mean, some thick porn star, stripper, or whatever, start throwing it at you. you're gonna be like, I'm gonna take it. Maybe you're not overthinking it. You just want to smash and move on, and maybe you have to do some little things for her here and there. Maybe you have to buy her some stuff. But if you're a multimillionaire, you're not thinking about it. And that's you got you a stray cat who keeps showing up because they expect scrap scraps from the table or whatever. And then if she hits the jackpot and she gets pregnant, you fucked. There's a lot of basketball players, football players too, where that becomes the case. I think Sean Kemp had like 11 kids when he was in the league. His entire fortune was wiped out. Um, there's some football players. I think Travis Henry, he had like 8, by 6 or 7 different women. Um, so as much as I complain about things like the family court system and and child support, what do you do when it's a football player and he's banging different chicks in every town and he knocks up a girl in Miami and then he knocks up a girl in Atlanta, he knocks up a girl in Philadelphia? He can't live with all of them. He's got children with them. There's no other way to get him to take care of those kids outside of the court mandating it. So again, I'm not just an ideologue. I'm against the family court system, but I understand why it exists. But it should only exist in those extreme cases in which the man impregnated the woman and disappeared, and then she can prove that he is the father of that child. You know, that's when the court should step in. You know, otherwise, why does the court care if he doesn't want to be with her anymore? Or the worst one is alimony. That's the worst thing, because that's you telling a man he has to take care of another adult person. He has to maintain her lifestyle. It's like, why? Why is her lifestyle important? If she couldn't earn it on her own, why is her lifestyle important that I have to maintain it? Nobody's ever come up with an example, with a good reason for that. It's one thing to say, well, you got to pay child support for the children that are yours. It's another thing to say, well, she's going to be single with no children, but you can't put her out on the street. So you have to give her the house, and then you have to give her a car, and then you got to give her part of the proceeds from whatever business ventures you were a part of. And then we're going to assume that she had some kind of support system and all the other ventures that you were working on. So she gets half of all of that. And you're like, wait a minute. Come on. Half? She didn't play half a basketball game. It's not even a Drake, you wasn't shooting with me in the gym kind of thing. It's just like literally she did not put in half the effort. It's literally, it makes no sense. It makes sense only if she was taking care of some kind of responsibility that you could have or should have been taken care of, but you didn't. Then it makes sense. For instance, Linda and Vince McMahon is a perfect example. Like, she was the president of WWE or the vice president, one or the other. So she helped build the company. So if she was to divorce Vince and take half his shit, not only was she married to him for over 40 years, but she actually worked in the company and was doing work on behalf of the company at the time. So it makes sense that she would get half. But if she was like some kind of trophy wife who you didn't really know who she was, you never really seen her before, and then she divorces him and she gets half, and it's like, well, what did she ever do for the company? She did nothing for the company. She had your children, but that was about it. It's like, okay, well, we take care of the kids, but half of everything when you put in no effort. And so what you'll end up saying is, quite often they want to give the wife credit for little things here and there. So you're it's kind of bizarre, but it's really scary. Now, the misery situation, I want to ask you your other question too, but that takes me to Mary Kay Letourneau. The situation of a guy being pulled into a situation he didn't want to be in. She was having sex with an underage boy, got pregnant, and he still had to pay child support. Like, that's a demon. All right? That's evil. We're condemning young boys to child support when it was illegal. What happened to them? And then what happened, they'll say is, well, it's in the best interest of the child. The child conceived in rape. It was in the best interest of the child that the boy who was raped pays child support. That's bizarre. Now imagine a law that says a woman has to keep a child of rape. Oh, you were raped, sure. But it's in the best interest of the child for you to actually give birth to that child. People have flipped their tables. They set their hair on fire. If you were to say that. That's why they always want that rape exemption when it comes to abortion, right? But there is no rape exemption for child support. There is no, well, I was drunk, I couldn't consent to having sex for boys. There is no, I was underage, I couldn't legally consent for boys. You know, there is no, she poked a hole in the condom. She the one who took the condom off, or whatever the case may be for boys. There's no such thing. There's no way out. There's literally no way out of that situation. You are responsible for that child, even if you are a victim. They put her in jail and still put him on child support. Frightening. That's a frightening scenario right there, man. And our society just moved on. Everybody's just like, man, that sucks. And they moved on. Ruined that kid's life. And then did it more than once. She ended up having like 3 kids with that guy. You know? She groomed him good. Then she fucked around and died. So. Alright, so Prince Ali asked the question of who was eviler, Patrick Bateman or Tyler Durden? Well, Tyler Durden was trying to awaken the beast in men. He wasn't really evil per se. Like his once he built the cults, he kind of lost his mind, but he started trying to go into terrorism and shit like that. But the idea of Fight Club was not evil at all, really. It was based off of wanting to escape the monotony of middle class life and go back to some sort of animalistic state of nature where men followed their passions and grouped with other men. Now, Patrick Bateman was evil, all right? Lying, manipulating, luring people into his home so he can murder them. You know, he chopped the guy with an axe. Now, of course, a lot of that stuff when it comes to American Psycho, but part of the craziness in the movie is you don't know what's real and what isn't. But Patrick Bateman is much more evil than Tyler Durden. It's not even a question in terms of what was what was his motive for doing the stuff that he was doing, you know? And he did terrible things with such glee that it was almost frightening. Where Tyler Durden was just kind of a jerk, you know, like he was kind of a jerk and an asshole. And when it started coming to building to a breaking point with Fight Club, I'm like, okay, he's going overboard. But for the most part, he was just a dick, you know? And he was the version of the guy who, wanted to stand up for himself. Aria says, I would just transfer all my money to an offshore account and leave the country. They can't prosecute me outside of the country. Yeah. If you're rich, you can do that in the United States. You could try to disappear. They'll get some kind of summary judgment against you anyway. And plus, it's not usually serious enough to have you extradited back to the United States. You have to be like they're actual terrorists who escaped to like communist countries and they didn't get extradited back. But usually for child support or something like that, it's not that serious. And those guys don't think to run away anyway. They don't have the money. They can't go live in a foreign country. They just don't think about it. WG feels that there was another situation of kids getting an adult babysitter to pay child support at 13 or right after turning 18. That's sick. That's really sick, man. This is some awful shit they be doing to little boys. Patrick could be suffering from a huge case of delusion. Tyler lost his touch and became power hungry. Yeah, but the thing with Tyler Durden is they're showing you that that's the sort of inevitable outcome of his thought process and the want to return to nature. The return to sort of an animalistic, uber masculine society is you have to destroy a lot of the feminizing aspects of society. And one of those things is like the banking cartels and all these things that uphold society, and society is incredibly unfair. You know, so a lot of ideals or ideas, and I'm pretty sure if I read the Scum Manifesto all the way through again, it'll probably come up that society needs to be destroyed. And a lot of uh, stories and studies or whatever that where one group of people is a victim group, it ultimately turns into we have to destroy it all, and that's the only way to fix this problem is if we destroy everything and start from scratch. This is typical communist shit. You know, I'm a good guy, they're the bad guys. The bad guys are embedded into the system. Even after we start killing them, they won't go away. We can change the laws, it won't work. We need to destroy it completely and rebuild it in our own image. That's really what it boils down to. So anybody who has these sort of crazy, um, I don't want to say maybe revolutionary is not the right term, but the crazy revolutionary mind states, usually they go down the rabbit hole to we have to destroy everything and rebuild it. That's the only way to fix it. Is you can't just destroy the thing that we don't like because it's usually tied into a lot of other things. We have to destroy it all, and just how they think. It's just how it works, which is very unfortunate. But we talk about it here too. The libertarians and the anarchists and stuff. They all about destroying entireties of things and not bothering to reform things. Anton Chigurh could be seen as eviler, but I know that Alex DeLarge is the evilest of the bunch. Anton Chigurh, I don't even know. Well, technically, he's evil. Technically, he's a bad guy. Um, he was more of a force of nature, though. Like he had. Yeah, well, I guess he did. He kind of tortured people with the whole flipping of the coin thing. So I guess you could say there's an evil element there. You know. So I would say that I would agree with you on that. But I don't know. Patrick suffering from delusions is like, yeah, he was clearly having, some a mental health crisis. He also was having an identity crisis, and he didn't know who he was or what he was doing. And that's the thing about being a cog in the machine. It says Anton is hated because he perfectly represents criminals escaping justice unscathed. Not really, because he wasn't really. A lot of the people he was shooting up wasn't really criminals. He was shooting like average people. And he eventually got his in the end. But am I remembering that movie right? Because, well, no, because Josh Brolin was a thief. So yeah, it was. I think he might have escaped in that movie. I'm not sure. I don't remember the end of Old Country for Old Men. I know that his job was to hunt down Josh Brolin's character and kill him for the money that he had stole. So he was a thief, and Anton Chigurh was kind of like, the inevitable. you know, he was like the sun setting where you knew he was going to find them eventually. You know he was going to get his hands on them eventually. So you was just basically spending the movie waiting to see Anton Chigurh put a hole in him. Um, WG Phil says, adding to my LGBT or incels theory, shouldn't any pan minority group be classified as inceldom, since all of those subgroups blame on group of people? I would I would imagine that it would be the asexuals who would be the incels. Because to be asexual sounds like something that was thrust upon you and not something that you chose. So it will be involuntary, wouldn't it? Now, uh, but that would be people who are truly asexual, people who truly feel no romantic connection with other people. Because I would imagine that they still seek that kind of companionship and maybe even are able to get it, but they can't enjoy it, you know? But I'm pretty sure that's like half of a percent of society. Not worth tripping on. But because asexuality comes across like one of those things that is like non-binaryism. It feels like it's made up. It's one of those things that really exists, but it's exacerbated because people like talking about the spectrum of things. And it's like, okay, there's hermaphrodites who are born with penises and vaginas, or they're women with beards, or because they have high levels of testosterone and that kind of stuff. But those are very, 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 very rare bunch of people, but they exist. Yes, Anton Chigurh is the personification of death. Yeah, he is literally death incarnate. He has no personality, and that's usually when you have a death incarnate, type of character. They truly will, lack a personality. He did have a little bit of a sense of humor, though. A little bit. It was kind of dark, but he had a little bit of a sense of humor. WG Phil says, I mean, look, like should Black Panther and feminism be considered some part of incel? Um, I'm not sure, because what about this is involuntary? That's the thing about being an incel, is that incels seek relationships but can't get them, and that's what makes them an incel. It's because it means involuntarily celibate, meaning that they want to have sex but they can't. They want relationships but they can't get them. Feminism, usually a woman as an incel is ridiculous because she can get sex just by putting herself out there. Usually there's somebody down bad. I mean, how many fat, disgusting, lard driven broads have we seen pushing strollers out here in the streets? Like, it's not hard for a woman to get laid. Now, women can try to create incels. Now, there is a feminist paper. I'm not sure if the Scum Manifesto is it. It might be another one where they try to. It's absolutely, there is another one. It's called political lesbianism. Let me see if I got it in my shit. I gotta look it up. But it's called political lesbianism, and that was the idea that women should not have sex with men, that they should just involuntarily not have sex at all. So here it is. It's called political lesbianism, asserts that sexual orientation is a political and feminist force, and for advocates lesbianism as a positive alternative to heterosexuality for women, as part of a struggle against sexism. So basically, it's political lesbianism, which is incels for women. It's for a woman but they'll basically be volcels, voluntary celibates, because a woman can get sex if she wants it, but they're saying that she should not want it and she should shun it. Actually, um, it's pretty goddamn stupid. But then again, a lot of feminism is stupid. Like a lot of feminist ideas are really dumb. Um, So I got it right here. I downloaded a PDF. Um, Here it is. It says, we do think all feminists can and should be political lesbians. Our definition of a political lesbian is a woman, identified woman, who does not fuck men. It does not mean compulsory sexual activity with women. This paper is divided into two parts. The first covers the reasons why we think serious feminists have no choice but to abandon heterosexuality. The second is arranged in the form of questions raised and comments made to us about the subject of political lesbianism and the way we think it should be answered. So they talk about abandoning heterosexuality. Um, since you guys asked me to delve into this, here is the question and answer portion. It says, it sounds like you are trying to saying that heterosexual women are the enemy. Their response is no, men are the enemy. Heterosexual women are collaborators with the enemy. All the good work that our heterosexual feminist sisters do for women is undermined by the counter-revolutionary activity they engage in with men. Being a heterosexual feminist is like being in the resistance as Nazi occupied Europe, where in the daytime you blow up a bridge, in the evening you rush to repair it. Take Women's Aid, for example. Women who live with men cannot tell battered women that survival without men is possible since they are not doing it themselves. Every woman who lives with or fucks a man helps to maintain the oppression of her sisters and hinders our struggle. They are pushing Volcels. Volcel is not incels. You know, they're saying you should be voluntarily celibate. You should not have sex with men. That does not mean you can't. Incels can't have sex with women because they cannot get a woman. A voluntary celibate female is choosing not to engage in sex, which is different. But you see that the political lesbianism, the hatred is there. Again, just take what they said. They said flat out, men are the enemy. You know, there have been sites that have been kicked off of Reddit for suggesting that women were the enemy. You know, telling you, man, feminism is crazy, 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 and they get away with a lot. This is also a school of thought that was passed around in colleges. That's how I know about it. So people think that people think it's cool and it's funny, and but it's misandry. You know, that's really what it is. It's misandry, but nobody cares. So nobody cares though. So they okay with it as long as it's women, because society is created to coddle women. So they can sit around here and talk about how men are the enemy and we should cut them up and we should break up their families and everything. And everybody else is supposed to sit back and grin. You know, like Huey and what did Huey say about the white people in the garden as he was giving them the riot act and they just started clapping? That's what you're supposed to do as a man when these broads are talking about destroying your family and how you have the reverse Midas touch. You're supposed to just sit there and clap at their ideas. Like you're dealing with children. Like children do some, like they're singing a song and they're singing off key, but you're just happy that they're doing it. You're like, yay, you did a really good job. That's what you're supposed to do with these crazy bitches. You're supposed to be like, yay, she's doing a good job, y'all. She's trying. Yay. Even though she's saying the most psychotic stuff possible. You know? And it started, I understand it's Juneteenth. There's a lot of black people who are doing that stuff with white people right now. It's literally like the Hutus and the Tutsis in college, where you're constantly talking about killing your political enemies, and everybody's just supposed to sit there and pretend that they don't hear it. Like they're supposed to sit there and pretend that it's not happening. And they've been doing this for years now. There's only so much of that stuff you can ingest, you know. Let's see. I want to read a little bit more of this stupid paper. I'm trying to find something else that's worth looking at here. Um, Standard sexist heterosexual sex with penetration as the unquestioned pinnacle is oppressive to women and tailored to men's interests. But that's not news and it's not contentious. The tragedy is that women's tentative attempts to explore and reveal and challenge standard sexual practice have been killed stone dead by the two commandments that if you don't do it with women, you're okay. And if you do it with men, you're out. These people are insane. These are crazy, crazy chicks. And nobody cares that they've been saying this stuff. Not been paying no attention. And they've been saying it for years. I want to see how old is this book? It is from let's see what year. I'm looking for the year. I don't see it. I'm pretty sure it's the 70s. I'm pretty sure it's the 70s. All right, so here's another one. Living with heterosexual privilege is difficult and dangerous. Try going to pubs with groups of women or living in a women's house where youths in the street lay siege with stones and catcalls. Heterosexual privileges are male approval. More safety from physical attack, greater ease in dealing with the authorities, getting repairs done, safety from a besieging obscene phone caller, being able to refer to a man in the bus queue or at work, which brings smiles of approval from women and men, let alone the financial advantages of being attached to a member of the male ruling class who has greater earning power. Because we choose to live without these privileges, we resent being used by heterosexual feminists as fueling stations when they are worn down by their struggles with their men. Women's liberation groups and women's households should be a refuge and support for heterosexual sisters in resolving their contradictions by getting out, but should not be used to prop up heterosexual relationships and thereby shore up the structure of male supremacy. It is absolute brain dead spaces in these individuals. But this is the kind of stuff they've been writing. It's the kind of stuff they think. It's been this way for a long time. Reddit has two X chromosomes and female dating strategy subreddits. I love a smart tears from those subreddits. I don't spend enough time on Reddit. Like, I I I look at Reddit for quotes of other things. Like if I go to Reddit for something, it's usually for a citation or something. Like I don't even have like an account, so I don't know what's on Reddit, and I try to stay away from those message boards anyway because I'm pretty sure I get banned in a couple of days. You know, I'm pretty sure I get banned from Reddit really quickly, so I don't really even try. I'm actually get banned from 4chan. Like, believe that. I loved 4chan. It was so fun. And then I got banned from 4chan, and I haven't been back on it since. Um, Prince Ali says, familiar with I have no mouth and I must scream. No, I'm not familiar with that at all. I think people keep looking for female versions of incels. There are some female incels. Typically, they're very low IQ, and they still have the desires, but nobody wants them. And then, of course, having sex with them could be considered rape because usually they have, again, very low IQs, or there's something about them that would make them less than attractive partners for men. But incel males, however, very difficult to save because it's a completely different situation. You know, I don't feel bad. I used to feel bad for incels, and I still kind of do, but I don't really because the energy used to complain about women, you could use towards finding women that might actually like you. Like too often, what incels are dudes who, it's not just a matter that they can't get girls. It's not that they can't get the girls that they want. It's like it's not that they can't get a girl. It's that they're all going after the same girl. And so you'll often see that with a lot of women too. Is a lot of, but women you typically will share a man. You know, this is a thing that with polygamy or whatever, one man, four women. So it's it's an interesting. I didn't work very hard to get banned from 4chan, by the way. I did not work very hard to get banned from 4chan. It just kind of happened. I don't remember what he was arguing about. I just once I couldn't get back on 4chan. Now I can't comment. I think they blocked my IP address. It's that bad. Like I can't even get on there. I can get on 4chan to peruse. I think if I wanted to um, just read things, I can do that. I can't post shit though. Like my IP address got banned, and I don't even know what that was about. Yeah, so 4chan is like one of the worst places on earth. I mean, that's what made it fun though. You know, it's also why I don't get offended by a lot of things because when you go on the message boards, you face some of the worst of the worst. You know, you face some of the worst and the worst on those message boards, and not just the N bomb and people calling black people apes and all that kind of stuff. You face some real racist and people who have like um, some real racist crap that they have like walls and walls of text and, and all kinds of stuff. You in there arguing with those people and shit. Man, it was crazy, but it teaches you something about yourself. You can't be on there and be easily offended, you know. But I got IP banned from 4chan. I don't understand why. WG Phil got IP banned on Reddit. Well, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't take me long to get IP banned on Reddit. It'd probably take me like a day or two. You know, that's why when I if I said if I was to ever do like a Reddit or something like that, I would do it purely just to read other things. I would not post anything. You know, but that's also why I have the channel. And I've been doing a lot of stuff on the channel because YouTube sent me a message about how my subscribers have stalled and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, you throttling the channel, and I know why. Like I'm not stupid. All right, you throttling my channel, and I'm pretty sure that video I put up tomorrow, it's not that bad, but it's gonna probably throttle my channel more because I've been talking about like trannies and stuff on the channel, and I just try not to monetize those videos and just cough it up to the game. Like this video is not gonna be monetized because I used the word fag a bunch of times in here, even though I was reading somebody else's words. They just they just YouTube is like that. You know, like they would prefer if I just talked about wrestling shows, but I would get bored and everybody else would too. It's like people who don't care about the shit I say on Sundays, they don't listen to this shit anyway. They'll pop back up on Mondays and listen to me talk about Raw on Tuesdays or whatever, and that's it. You know, there's a lot of people who don't care what I think about comic books or video games or politics or anything like that. But I usually take a measured approach. I'm not about to sit here and yell at this, yell on YouTube all day. I'll do that because it is kind of fun. Sometimes you get frustrated, but other issues, I feel like yelling and screaming and carrying on and calling names don't really do you any good. You know, you don't get you don't get anything done. And sometimes you just want to fix problems. You know, I'm a problem fixer. That's what I want. I've seen a lot of things that was. I was seeing people that Hitler would salute on 4chan. Like I said, man, guys with like walls of text about black people and IQs and shit like this. And you just be sitting there like, okay, okay, okay. And then you try to take all day to break that down. You be like, oh no, that's information overload. You may just LOL, you're a loser. Look at all that crap you typed. You know, like fuck it. I'm not about to sit here and try to tackle all this shit. But they even do like crazy memes on Reddit that are like I'm not Reddit, but 4chan is like crazy. Like I've seen them meme like black people fucking monkeys and all kinds of crazy stuff on there. You be like, what? And they must have like really really good VPNs or something where they can get around getting IP banned off of 4chan, but I don't. I don't even have a VPN, so it's it's sad. WG Field says for Juneteenth, do you think people should highlight true African heroes instead of blackwashing Macedonian princesses? We should do that all the time, really. They should always do that. I think for Juneteenth, however, we should talk about the people of that era, because Juneteenth was a very specific thing in terms of. Wait a minute, ain't Juneteenth tomorrow? I think I got the day off tomorrow. Now that I think about it, um, hmm, when is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is tomorrow, right? Or is it today? I have to figure that out. Anyway, I Juneteenth is for Black Americans. I'm avid that we use that time on Black people who are not always supported by Black Americans. I just learned about a Black woman named Julia Brown. I was going to make today's video. Maybe I'll do a different video on it about her. And she worked. She was a housewife who became an FBI agent, and she infiltrated the Black communist movement, like the civil rights movements, looking for communists. So I'm very interested in that. And I found the Ebony Magazine article that she told her story in. And everybody's like, every time I looked her up, I just kept seeing people call her a sellout because she was working for the feds and all this kind of stuff. They weren't listening. They weren't listening at all to what she was trying to say. So it was awful, man. It's terrible stuff. Najee Savage is confused how Juneteenth got so big in the last 5 years. A lot of it was cultural push. It became a Democrat thing. And whatever Democrat says goes, essentially, in the culture. They decided they wanted Juneteenth to be a federal holiday, and you are a racist if you don't support it. Very few Republicans argued against it. They were like, oh, well, I don't want to be called a racist, so whatever. And you'd be like, okay, sure. It's a legitimate thing, but it wasn't even celebrated in all 50 states. It was celebrated in like Texas. Like that was it, because that's where the event happened. Like it happened in Texas and in some other southern states where it made sense for it to be a holiday because that's where it was happening. But now it's a federal holiday. I'm just kind of like, okie dokie, But what they're doing, and I said this before with the whole with the civil rights laws and now they're getting Black people their own holidays, and they're trying to create a parallel United States with its own flag and its own national anthem and its own holidays, and it just doesn't make sense. This is one country. Juneteenth should be considered an American holiday because it happened in the United States, but at the same time, that should be an agreed upon thing by all 50 states. It shouldn't just be the 2 or 3 states that think that kind of thing is important, which is basically California, New York, and the East Coast and the West Coast. Because I can't even just say California and New York anymore, because Oregon is just as bad, and Washington is just as bad, and New Jersey is as bad as New York, and Massachusetts is just as bad as New Jersey and New York. So it's all the major metropolitan areas decided they was going to force the issue, and so they did. And they had the cultural approval from all of the deaf, and conservatives keep thinking that if you give away things, you'll win, or you could surrender, keep surrendering, and it's not that big of a deal. That's why when somebody like Nikki Haley wants to run for president, like she took down the Confederate flag because a bunch of liberals were arguing about it, and she was like, "Oh, I was just trying to avoid a race war in my state of South Carolina or North Carolina." And I just looked at it and said, "Nope, you don't know what you did. Once you showed that weakness, they're going to threaten race war over everything. At that point, you know, you've shown that this is what you're willing to do, and now they're going to just use that against you. It was just a flag. It was just some statues that we took down. Next is going to be it's just some laws. Nobody is paying attention. Nobody cared about those laws anyway. It's just property that they're stealing. It's always a way to minimize important things because one very passionate, angry side, and you just don't want to stand up to them because you're too jelly belly. And we end up with worse situations because it doesn't stop there. Like she took down the Confederate flag, and what did that stop? It didn't stop anything. They didn't all just go home and call it a day. Like once they started taking down all of those statues, did the riot stop? No. They intensified, if anything, because now you've shown weakness. It's the exact same thing that happened. I hate to use that word. It happened to Hitler. When he invaded Poland, everybody was kind of like, wait a minute, what are you doing? And they was like, okay, we'll let you take Poland, but you can't do anything else. And he was like, well, if you let me take Poland, I'm just going to take whatever I want now. So I mean, it is, it is what it is. I just shrug, man. It's just pathetic. The Republican Party is pathetic. They're so scared of being called racist and sexist and homophobes, and it's literally the only weapon in their toolbox is to call you names. That's it. And the only way to get away from that is you got to inoculate yourself with that. You got to be like, look, I'm just going to accept they're going to call me a racist or whatever. Just going to accept it and do what you need to do anyway. But trying to run away from it by running lukewarm black people in some of these places who have no chance in hell of winning because you need to have a black face running. Come on, you playing the left game on that tip. Nikki Haley, they playing the left game with that. She's an Indian woman named Nikki. That's not even her real name. And then the first thing that you're going to get from the left is she's not even using her real name. And that's going to sink her ship because everybody's going to be like, oh, she's anglicizing. And it's true, she is anglicizing. But Barack Obama, he anglicized for a while too. He was known as Barry. They called him Barry. They didn't know his name was Barack. So anglicizing is not even a bad thing anyway. A lot of people anglicize their names. Because their names might be difficult or it might sound too foreign or whatever. But that's when you plan on you'll never win if it's always an away game. And that's why the RNC is stupid. They always play away games. They never play home games. It's always, they find ways to play on the Democrats' playing field every single goddamn time. They get called a racist and then they spend all day arguing about how they're not racist. Instead of just saying, fuck you. You've called every Republican for the last 40 years a racist. Every single one has been Hitler. Every single one has been worse than Hitler. They're now saying that DeSantis is worse than Trump. They've been doing this for 40 years. Trump was worse than McCain. McCain was the worst ever. Then Mitt Romney was the worst ever. Bush was literally Hitler until the next election. Then the next Republican was literally Hitler. And then Trump was literally Hitler. Now DeSantis is literally Hitler. People are so stupid. You're so stupid that you sat here and literally been called Hitler. None of these people have anything in common. Except the fact they got R's next to their name and all of a sudden now they're Nazis. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And people just go along with that. You should have a supercut of just various Republicans being called Nazis for no reason, right? Just literally you called every Republican a Nazi. It literally doesn't mean anything anymore. So ignore it. spending all day arguing about whether you're a Nazi or not, or whether you're a white supremacist. It's like, what Republican exists that is not a white supremacist? Name one. They can't. They won't, because it doesn't matter who it is. You're a white supremacist. It could be my black ass. They'll call me a white supremacist. They call Clarence Thomas, whose dark is charcoal. He's a white supremacist. It's like these words don't mean anything anymore. It's just labels. And people are stupid. You know? People are stupid. Najee Savage says, at work, my coworker told me he didn't like teams taking away the Native American mascots because it's erasing history. I'm just like, okay, because both of us are Native, but I'm also black. My thing is, a lot of the Native American names were actually to sort of honor those people, you know? Like, there's many states, like they keep talking about how there's all this Native American erasure. It's like, Utah is not an English word. Nebraska is not an English word. Oklahoma, Idaho, Wyoming. These are not English words. They don't mean anything in English. These are usually words that they borrowed from the native people who used to live in those areas. If anything, something like Michigan, where I live, Michigan is not an English word. All right. They have taken names, like there are cities named after Native American tribes, like Ottawa. You know, there's an Ottawa, Michigan. There's an Ottawa County in Michigan. You know, there's plenty of counties and cities and etc. that are named after Native Americans as a way to honor them. But you let progressives tell it, we're trying to erase Native Americans from our history by naming states after them. There's literally states named after Native American tribes, but we were trying to erase them from history. That's one of the stupidest things. Like, it's crazy that people don't think about that. You know, like we take for granted that there's a state called Wyoming. Nobody ever asks, like, where did that word come from? You know, where did the word Wyoming come from? What does it mean? It's some kind of native word. You know, Minnesota. You know, what is South Dakota, North Dakota? You know, Dakota is a Native American people. There's so many states that are named after Native Americans, and we just kind of hand wave it. It's like, no, they honored those people by naming states after them. You know, they integrated them into their culture by naming states after them. Like, sure, there was still some discrimination against them, absolutely, but you would think that if a white people were so white supremacists, they wouldn't have bothered naming their state Oregon. You know, they wouldn't have counties named after Native American people. You know, like, why would there be? Why would white people name their stuff after Native Americans if they hated them so much? The French came over, they started giving stuff French names. The Spanish came over, they started giving shit Spanish names. White people started giving shit Native American names because those people lived there. And they had somewhat close relationships with those women. It wasn't always cowboys and Indians as evil, you know, fighting each other in the streets of Tombstone. It wasn't always the case. It happened, but it wasn't always the case. But people are too stupid to think about that. And that should dead the argument. It's like, why are we even having an argument when we have several states named after Native American tribes? And big cities. I think Atlanta is named after a Native American tribe, if I remember correctly. Or is it named after Atalanta? I think it's the Greek goddess. I'm not sure which one it is. But there's states named after Native American tribes. It's stupid to even go there, to say that we're trying to erase their history and all that kind of crap. It's dumb. WG Phil says a lot of people, they erase the family, comes out slamming it, like the song of the South actor's daughter who recently passed, or the Redskins likeness. Yeah. It's very it's very sad, but people are so stupid. Again, we are like there's a stupidity to crowds that really is embarrassing. WG Field says whether they like it or not, Trump is the new GOP. DeSantis is going to set himself up for failure. I definitely think DeSantis should have waited. I understand why he decided to run right now, but he probably should have waited. You know, even indicting Trump, like there's no point in talking about Trump getting arrested. We knew that it was going to happen eventually. They were going to find something to arrest him over, even if it was just jaywalking. They were going to find something to arrest him over. But it's not really going to damage him, if anything, because Trump has a cult of personality. It's just going to prove that the system is against him. And the left has to be smart enough to know that you really just embolden those people by doing shit like arresting them. If you really wanted to belittle Trump, you would ignore him. But the left is hoping that there's going to be people who are going to be disgusted by Trump. Therefore, they're going to keep him front and center so they can run against him. But in reality, making people make the decision to vote between two absolutely disgusting candidates, one that is, playing grab ass with every woman in sight, and the other being being Donald Trump. It's kind of crazy. Like Biden is falling all over the place. They got, I mean, you see the Democratic Party, even if you are just being objective and you're not like a pure Democrat, the way that they use Joe Biden and the way that they use the guy in Pennsylvania, what's his name, Fetterman, like these dudes have no business being in government. If you are a person of mercy and kindness, you would not let people with significant mental issues hold office. But the reason why you will do that is because you can figure that I'll just control them from the back room. It doesn't matter what he says on the podium because we control the thing. It's a team. He's just the face of the team. So him being in cognitive decline doesn't matter. And that's brutal. That's brutal. Somebody needs to stand up and say that. Like Democrats were willing to put a corpse up here, and they don't care. They don't care about people. They care about power. Otherwise, they say, Joe Biden, please. They'd have told him 4 years ago, you're not even mentally competent to run for office. Go sit down somewhere. Mentally, you're not competent. You're not sharp enough. All right? They'd have told that Fetterman guy to go have a seat. But since all people care about is power, it doesn't matter. You're just going to be our sock puppet. Just read whatever we put in front of you. And if you don't read it right, we'll just edit it so that it won't sound too bad. And if it does sound bad, we'll just ignore it. We'll just talk about how Trump is, comb over in his hair or he's orange or whatever and call it a day. Doesn't matter. DeSantis should have waited, though. Trump is already in his mid-70s. 9 times out of 10, win, lose, or draw, he's not going to make it to the next election. So DeSantis should have just waited. He was a fool to run now. Let Nikki Haley dumbass run now because she ain't going to do nothing but lose. She's already turned off a lot of people because of her run as governor. Nobody gives a fuck about her. Here's the weird thing. WG Field says the idea of the Republicans being Nazis, while the DNC is doing Nazi behavior like taking kids away if they reject child transitioning or using the system against enemies, should shut down any discussion. Yes, but when your playbook says to accuse your opponents of what you are doing, then I guarantee that it's fine, right? That's literally in the communist playbook. Is everything that you claim your opponent is doing, you're actually doing. Like they'll claim that the Republican Party is dividing people. Like you're trying to divide the country. Meanwhile, they're talking about you should tax the rich. White people are responsible for everything. Men are trying to destroy our society. Everybody I don't like is a white supremacist. It's like I thought the Republicans were the ones trying to divide society. You're not listening. You're not paying attention. It's all about slogans and bullshit. You know, like the Republicans are saying there shouldn't be any black holidays because black Americans are Americans. And so we shouldn't have African Americans. It should just be Americans. And it's okay if Mexicans want to be Americans, but they got to learn how to speak English. It's all about the melting pot when it comes to the Republicans. And there's a negative to that too. But that's typically the voice of unity. It's like, hey, you can be like us. We would welcome you, but here's what we need. Here's what we are asking of you. There's expectations we're going to put upon you. And then the Democrats will say, well, we accept you as you are because we don't want you to change anything, because if you're stupid, then it's better for us. So we'll suggest that black people should have their own language, African American vernacular. And then I even see smart black people going for it. I'm like, bro, the Constitution is not written in AAVE. Like, people need to be able to read their rights, bro. Don't argue for lower quality anything in terms of black folks. And then you can't just, the Democrat problem is that, and it's going to take probably a long time for it to actually happen, is that they're trying to force things that are unnatural to be natural. And they're going to eventually, that rubber band is going to snap. The whole transgenderism thing, that's just one thing. I just sat here and read a lot of feminist papers, right? A lot of lines from feminist papers. There are people in the Democrat Party who believe this stuff. There's going to be regular Democrat dudes who are going to hear that kind of shit and be turned off. You're not going to be, some people are going to be allies regardless of what they say because they're just that indoctrinated. But there's going to be other people who are going to listen to this and say, what the hell is these broads talking about? Why do they want to destroy the family structure? This is why when Black Lives Matter got outed as wanting to destroy the family structure, they took it down. Because they realized that average Joe black dudes, if they see that, they'll be turned off. And it'll destroy what they're trying to create, which is a safe haven for trannies. And they've been talking about this for a while. They've been taking the blood of black boys and basically using it to pass around the collection plate for trannies. But you're not allowed to say it. And they took it off the website. So you don't know. You seem like a conspiracy theorist if you start talking about that. Or you're a transphobe. It's like, no, it's just telling the truth. It's just a fact. Y'all were taking money and giving it to Democratic Party. The Act Blue thing. I mean, it's just a fact. Not about me being a Republican or anything like that. It's just true. It's true. You were taking money from the black community and giving it to the Democratic Party. Not giving anything back to the hood. You were giving it to the Democratic Party. I went on this rant a couple of weeks ago about all the money that goes into Black Lives Matter, the NAACP, and the Urban League, and all the Rainbow Coalition. None of that money actually goes back into the neighborhoods. They never build schools. They never build hospitals. They never put together a supermarket or anything like that. They're not entrepreneurs at all, which is what you need in the neighborhoods. They're communists, so they're not entrepreneurs, which means they don't hire anybody. They don't hire any low-class people anyway. They hire other people who are like themselves, which are middle-class navel-gazers who just want to sit around all day talking about how oppressed they are. But somebody who really needs a job, they don't have nothing for you. They have no usage for the vast majority of black people who exist. They have no use for you. And look, the Republican Party, they don't do anything. They basically just say it's unwinnable in that area, so they give it up. But the Democrats just utilize your votes and your anger. And then they take all that stuff and they transfer it to the middle class. Well, their middle class, which is their voter base. Middle class white women and all of the crazy ideas that they come up with, like climate change and homosexuality agenda and all this kind of crap. All that shit is coming from liberal white women. Right? People in the lower class, they don't have time for that kind of crap. They'd be happy if they could just find a job, and most of the time they can't. And they can't because the upper class have decided they're going to quote unquote defund the police or rejigger the criminal justice system so that nobody ever gets arrested for serious crimes or spends any serious time in jail for serious crimes. And then you got petty shit like the massive amount of shoplifting in California that's causing stores to leave. It's not just we're losing stores, it's also people are losing places to work. Progressives don't replace that shit because they're using all the money on politics. They're using all the money on the bureaucrats. You know, they have an entire industry on homelessness. They have an entire industry on mental health. They have an entire industry on diversity, equity, and inclusion. They have an entire industry on these things where people make six figures and they get a pension and assistance. And there's an entire bureau of people who don't do shit all day. And meanwhile, there's people outside sleeping in the street. And you're supposedly collecting money to help with homelessness, and you haven't built one shack for anybody. You know, it's never going to happen. But again, people are stupid. They don't pay attention. They're not outcome oriented. They are feelings oriented. I feel like the Republicans are racist and sexist and homophobic and transphobic, and therefore I won't vote for them. Okay, fine. I feel that the Democrats believe in me, they support me, yada yada yada. Okay, fine. But then look at the outcome. The outcome is Democrats, regardless of race, gender, whatever, they become more famous and they become richer. And the areas that they represent become poorer. There's still fewer jobs in those areas. You had, what was the name of that kid who went to Baltimore and started cleaning up the street because the mayor and all of them just refused to do it? You know, there have been white people from churches outside of Detroit who have come into this city and just started cleaning up like the Joy Road, Dexter area. When I used to work in those areas, I used to, you know, see that, go out there and help them. You know, they'll just, but they'll tell you white people are racist. And the only people who are cleaning up abandoned houses and needles and shit off the street are white people. You know, like I tell you, like I fucked around and nearly cried. It was probably a couple of years ago when I went on, it was Dexter Road. I was just walking around, man, and there was needles in the street. And I just saw children with no shoes. They were just outside playing like kids do. But they live next to an abandoned house, and there's needles over there. There's rats over there. There's people who have drunk Hennessy and thrown the glass over there. Sometimes broken glass in the grass and all that kind of shit. You know, they've been treating these abandoned houses like garbage bins, just throwing stuff in there. So there's all kinds of stuff in these abandoned houses. There might even be bodies in there. And there's people who are sitting on the porch barefoot. They got the children running around the neighborhood barefoot, riding bikes and everything. And they're completely oblivious to the entire mountain of disease and filth that they live right next to. And they're completely oblivious to it. There's nothing they can do about it. But then they'll start screaming about gentrification. If 2 white people, 3 white people show up and they start trying to put together something to clean it out. Oh, you're gentrifying our neighborhoods. You're buying up all of our property. It's like, you would rather black people live in squalor than get any help from anybody. And then you'll claim that you're out there willing to help them. But you're not. You have no interest in helping them. Not really. You're interested in taking from them. And then you'll create some kind of nonprofit that'll give them smoke detectors for free. You know? Oh, we'll help you put more locks on your doors. We'll help you we'll give you a free club for your car, but we won't arrest a motherfucker for stealing your car. We'll just give you a free club. So it'll help against your car being stolen. Oh, okay. Thanks. Just doing nothing, you know? Just doing nothing. Somebody who's outcome oriented will be able to just walk around a city like Detroit that's been Democrat for 40 years. There's certain areas from here that's been bombed out since the 60s. Nobody's willing to invest in these neighborhoods. Why? Well, can't get anything done in this city. You know, city's like 80% black at one point in time. You start arresting people, all of a sudden they start complaining about the prison industrial complex, and like it starts in schools too. You can't kick a kid out of a school because it's just preparing kids for the prison industrial complex. It's like no responsibility for nobody, no responsibility, no accountability. Therefore, nothing ever gets done. Therefore, nothing ever gets fixed, and it's a cycle. That's exactly how Democrats want it. You're stupid, you're poor, you're dependent on them. You'll keep showing up. If anybody says anything about, hey, we need to start opening businesses here or whatever, they'll call you a gentrifier, they'll call you a racist, they'll call you a white supremacist, whatever the case, and you'll lose because the people are stupid and they'll vote against you. And then they'll just stay poor and they'll stay living next to abandoned houses and long stretches of nothing. I mean, just long blocks of nothing in Detroit. Where they've torn down the abandoned houses, praise God, but now there's just a big patch of nothing. There's nothing there. No house, nothing. Just house and then a long stretch of nothing and then another house that's probably dilapidated. That's most of Detroit. Downtown is piff because all the white people are down there. They gentrified the fuck out of downtown. So when you see all the middle class Negroes arguing about gentrified Detroit, they mean downtown, where they want to be. And they want to be down there because the white people are down there. Now they want to have riverfront property. They don't want to live in the hood. They don't want to live in, they tore up the projects. They ain't seem to have a problem with that. Well, they did have a problem with it when it happened. But the Brewsters were fucked. It was disgusting, man. I went to the Brewsters as a kid, man. It was like being in Baghdad. Like, and you can always tell when there's middle class black people involved because they never really have real frames of reference of how bad things are. They look at things and they say this is how it should be and this is how it's supposed to be. So when they tear up things like the projects, they're like, oh, you're making all of these people homeless. It's like, okay, look, the Robert Greene projects in Chicago was fucked up. All right, rampant crime, drugs, prostitution, just a lot of terrible stuff going on in there. I'm glad they tore it up. Nobody deserves to live in that kind of squalor and fucked up. Why would you want to live like that? Only middle class people who don't know shit think that you would rather have that than even attempt to do something different, even if it doesn't work out for you. Just breaking that up helps. Even if you say, well, you have to move away. Okay, moving away is better than living in basically a hole in the ground. They would rather you live in a pit than somebody try to do something for you. No. Detroit is fucked. All right. And it's only getting worse because it's full of stupid people and stupid people are running it. And you can't get even a moderately intelligent person to run the city. And all you need to do is Google how many people that was on the Detroit City Council that's been indicted in the last 5 or 10 years. I'm talking people got caught taking money from organizations. I think I talked about it on this channel, how many people from Detroit City Council got arrested, or are under some type of investigation. Just so many. I think it's at least a half dozen. This city is fucked. Most of the city don't even vote. That's the thing. Like the voter turnout in Detroit is like 2% maybe. So that means anybody who wins in the city of Detroit got about 100,000 votes maybe out of 800,000, 700,000 people. That'd be like 1 in 7. Come on, man. And it's just like that in places like Baltimore too. Just like that in places like Oakland, where there's not a lot of black turnout. There's not a lot of turnout because the people have been conditioned that nothing's going to change. So it's hard to get them energized and thinking about change. And then anybody who actually does come in and start talking about change, You're a racist, you're a homophobe, yada, 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 and you end up losing. Because then you have to tell the truth, right? You have to start telling the truth. You have to start saying, like, hey, uh, maybe we need to start prosecuting people for stealing. And that may mean your nephew, who is a thief, is going to go to jail for a long time. Oh, well, I don't want that. I'm going to vote against you. And then Pookie and Ray Ray can steal all they want now. But now you're going to complain why you can't find a job, why you ain't got no supermarket in your neighborhood, why you ain't got a Walmart like everybody else got Walmart, why you ain't got this and you ain't got that. It's because, well, we tried to arrest Pookie and Ray Ray for selling dope on the corner. You said no. We tried to arrest them for stealing. You said no. We tried to arrest them for carrying guns. You said no. We tried to arrest them for raping and beating up people. You said no. We tried to kick them out of school so that other kids can learn. You said no. We we tried to get rid of these teachers who are more focused on people being gay than your kids actually learning how to read. You said no. And now you have to live with the consequences. That's why I don't feel bad for places like New York and Portland and San Francisco. It's like you voted for this. But there's again, a lot of people didn't vote for it. They've just been so disillusioned that they just kind of gave up. They just kind of laying there and taking it. There's nothing they can do. Just keep increasing the taxes, you know, keep increasing the bureaucracy of the city, and nothing gets done. You got to wait for the white people who go to church to show up and clean up a neighborhood because, heavens to Betsy, the community organizations that you pay for don't do it. Black Lives Matter doesn't do it. They don't go around picking up needles. They're too busy outside marching in front of City Hall and twerking. They don't understand that your kids is playing next to an abandoned house. That would be the first thing I would say is, like, why are y'all out here twerking in front of, like, don't you know that there are neighborhoods in which children are playing near abandoned houses that are filled with, like, drugs and needles and homeless people who could be dangerous? You could be actually going around cleaning that stuff up, boarding up houses, doing whatever, but you're out here twerking in front of City Hall for trans rights. Who the fuck cares? Like, that's not even a real issue to the average person. They ain't got there yet because they're worried about how they're going to feed themselves. And that's the core of why so much of that shit comes out of the colleges. Because when you go to college, you almost come out immediately middle class. You come out better than other people. Better than most. And I don't mean like literally better. I'm talking about you're more awake. You're more aware. Because that's where you go pick up all of your middle class agendas. All your we care so much about puppies. We care so much about the environment and homosexuals and all this kind of stuff, when the average Joe is just trying to figure out how he's going to pay his child support. He want a job so he can pay child support. You're banning places for him to smoke. Oh no, he can't smoke a Newport within 100 yards of this building. Like, where are your priorities? Your priorities are making sure the gays and puppies get all the rights in the world. Meanwhile, other people their kids are playing in vacant lots. That's crazy. No priorities, but that comes with no accountability. You're not accountable. It doesn't matter what happens. And the one time the left does actually win, it really makes the Republicans look bad. Flint was a big W for the Democrats because when the state took over Flint and fucked up the water, oh, that was a big W for the Democrats. They didn't care all those people got poisoned. They didn't really give a shit. It was just, see, the Republicans are racist because Flint is a black city. They didn't even mention that Flint was damn near bankrupt. Same as Detroit, same as Benton Harbor. All the cities that got taken over by the state were financially bankrupt and being run by incompetent folks. Who cares if they're democratically elected? It was run by people who were absolutely incompetent. They did not have the ability to turn the city around. And the Republicans fucked it up. They poisoned the entire city of Flint. And now they're likely never win another election in Michigan for a long, long time. Because look what they did. It'll always go back to Flint and how they use the state to take over cities and all this kind of stuff. And now you got Gretchen Whitmer. She's going to do everything. It's going to be state enforced homosexuality in a minute. It's no different in New York or California because Whitmer she's a fangirl for New York style liberalism. She literally had like a Ruth Bader Ginsburg candle and T-shirt and all this kind of stuff. And she's wearing a Fauci T-shirt one time. She's really bizarre. She's a really bad person. But you can't get anybody else to win because as Detroit goes, the state goes, and Detroit is a huge metropolitan area that will pretty much always vote Democrat. All right, so it's 10 after 2, 10 after 10. Let's wrap this up. Let's see, Stone Messi guy, what's up, man? He said he got a shotgun for Father's Day. That fucking rules. That's great. I know you're unhappy that they passing these laws now that mandates you have to have a lock on it. But I think responsible people would buy a lock anyway. It just seems like they're going to increase the cost of locks so that you can't get one. And so you'll have the gun, but it'll be illegally stored and you can get arrested. It's stupid. Stone Mexican guy says, I feel for the blacks. They bought into the lies and are holding themselves down instead of lifting themselves up. Yeah, it's unfortunate. They're not really holding themselves down as much as they've given up, and they have decided not to pick themselves up. So many people, they just accept that the government is corrupt and that there's nothing they can do, and so they decided not to go to vote for it. But they have been beat over the head with, lack of opportunities. And they think opportunities are supposed to be given to them rather than they're supposed to create them. And the only thing that could fix the country is the thing that made it great in the first place. When Donald Trump talked about make America great again, what made America great was the ability to pursue one's own endeavors. Entrepreneurship, home ownership, that kind of stuff. The Democrats don't like any of that. They hate landlords. They hate landlords. They hate business owners. Unless you're the kind of business that they like. They have certain business owners that they like. But landlords, oh my God, they hate you, especially like in places like New York. Oh, you let a cousin sleep on your couch for 2 months. All of a sudden, he got rights. What? He doesn't pay any bills. He got rights. He got squatters' rights. Squatters' rights. Where'd that come from? Who created that? Only person who get rights are the people who are paying the bills. Nobody else gets any rights. All right? I'll put you out tomorrow, motherfucker. But that ain't how they do it. They got all these squatters' rights and, tenants' rights. And if you're a landlord, you're fucked. So you can't be a landlord and make any money in New York, California, or in places like Detroit. You can't own a business because, the business is the licensing laws. And then they want to get you on labels and all this kind of stuff. There's so much legislation around what you can do, what you can't do, where you can put it, where you can't put it, all this garbage. It's tough, but that's the stuff that made America great. Is that everybody could open their own little mom and pop shop. Like it wouldn't have taken nothing for you to just deregulate home business ownership, let people open businesses. And a black person who say, look, I'm tired of there not being a supermarket in my neighborhood, I'm going to create one. He can even crowdsource it to start it. Hey, I'm going to start a business on GoFundMe. I need $200,000. It doesn't even need to be people in the neighborhood. It could be people from anywhere, Saskatchewan, giving money. And he could open up a supermarket in his neighborhood. But we can't even do that because the government will, oh, well, what are you going to do with this land? You got to go through the state to do everything. You got to go through the city to do almost anything in this place. You can't just do shit. Like There are certain places where you can just, hey, I like this plot of land. I'm gonna go pay for it, and I'm gonna build a house on it. And then the state is like, okay, sure, go ahead. Here, you need. I literally watched some dudes get grilled by a city council because they wanted to open a business, and they were like, well, we have unions, and how are you going to integrate the unions into your, how are you going to integrate this people? How are you going to train them? How are you going to do it? Like, God, can you get the doors open first? Can you get windows on this motherfucker before you start doing all this? But that's not how it works. They want to know everything. Like, you don't need to know all this shit, okay? You don't need to know whether the doors are going to be opening or push or pull. You don't need to know that. It's not relevant. You know, like, get the fuck out of the way. Let this guy do his business. Unless it's, something that he's making, nuclear weapons in there or something like that. Like, if he's mixing chemicals, maybe. But if it's the worst thing that can happen, he set his own house on fire. Who cares? So it's ridiculous. Yeah, I mean that's the good thing about the Sunday streams. I always talk about something and end up just morphing into other things all the time. Absolutely, I like that idea. Stone Mexican guy got the right idea with the guns. I don't have any guns right now because I'm not in a place where that might be conducive. But I get a little bit more secure. I'm gonna start getting some guns for sure. Uh, Najee Savage said the older Gen Blacks pass down the system against the mindset to the youth and describe their drive to achieve. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Um, a lot of them just believe that the man is out to get them all the time and that they can't do anything themselves. And it's heartbreaking, that mindset. Poverty, it's a poverty mindset. It really is. You know, also, I appreciate ambition, which is the one thing about Dope Boys that I kind of liked is a lot of them are very ambitious. They want something out of life. They go on about it the wrong way, but at least they want something. It's a lot better than people who don't want shit or expect something to be handed to them. You know, Dope Boys at least have the right mentality in terms of you got to get out here and go get it. They may be doing it the wrong way, but at least they have the right idea ultimately. Stone Messenger says, I remember when my dad bought his house. When we were kids, we started fixing his roof. The city came by and said we need a permit. My dad said, why do I need a permit to fix some work on my own house? There you go. That's the kind of shit they do all the time. All the time. They do that shit all the time, man. My uncle had a couple of stores closed because of permits and shit. Like, he just wanted a penny candy store. They went. My uncle's a piece of shit, but at the very least, he was entrepreneurial minded. Like, he's always been trying to open his own businesses and stuff. And he always runs into these loopholes. I remember when I was working in communities. There was a guy who he wanted to own a puppy park. Like, there was a lot of large patch of unused land across the street from his house, and he had like 8 dogs. And then when his mom died, she had like 4 dogs, so he had like 10, 12 dogs. And he just had this in his mind that he was going to create a puppy park with like a playground over here, and you could take your dog over there, and they have these little obstacle courses for the dogs and all this kind of stuff. And then around the corner, there would be like a grooming spot where you can get your dog groomed and everything. He had it all visualized in his head. Couldn't get the land, though, because the state didn't believe that was necessary. It's like, it's nothing there right now. Literally, there's nothing there. Let the guy do what he wants to do. No, nope. Well, we don't feel like that's an appropriate use of the land. What? It's a residential area. Who cares? There's nothing there. There's no houses here. But it's like they look for reasons to just leave things as they are. Like, in a perfect world, that guy could have been working on that puppy park when I met him. And he started taking some of his dogs away because they said he had too many dogs. He has to own a kennel or something like that to have that many dogs. It's like a city ordinance on how many dogs you can have on the property and all this kind of bullshit. So he had to take some of his dogs and take them to another place. And so now he had to separate the dogs and all. It's like, it's ridiculous. I don't even like animals like that, but that guy does. And he had, some real good ideas about what to do with dogs and shit. And the city decided they was going to shit all over it for no good goddamn reason. That you don't have a better idea, you just don't want his idea. That's stupid. And he's going to spend his own money on it. Let him spend his money. You know, even if he wanted a small business loan, as long as he paid it back, so what? You know, even though I would suggest not getting a business loan from the state, it's probably not a good idea, but people are used to doing with the way they do things. And that's where they get all of this stuff from anyway, is because the government ends up holding the purse strings for a lot of this shit because people go to the state and try to get money. It's like, no, go to the bank. Like go to the bank and get a loan. They can ask them any questions they want. It's a private industry, but the government, you'll answer all them goddamn questions, and then they'll bury you on permits, and that should be in development hell for years and years and years. And you spent money on lawyers and all this kind of shit. No, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it at all. Najee Savage, the poverty mindset also begs to the government to fix the problem they started. Yeah, the government causes the issue, and then all of a sudden the government has to come in and fix it. And I say, like, people don't understand, they don't believe in themselves. And that's part of a big problem that's, I've already been talking for too long. But one of the big issues is that people that have no belief and no faith in themselves, and faith in yourself or faith in your neighbors can really help a lot. If you believed in yourself, you wouldn't sit back and wait for somebody to provide you with a job. You would go out there and create one. Like, I don't want to say this because I don't want to set like this standard or put myself on a pedestal, but a kid knocked on our door a week or two ago. He was no older than 12. He clearly didn't want to be doing this, but he did it anyway. He knocked and he said, "Do you need your grass cut?" And I was like, "What did you say, boy?" He's like, "Do you need your grass cut?" And I was like, "Are you asking to cut my grass?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "We already got somebody to do it," but I gave him $20 anyway because just to encourage him. Like, it took some gumption for you to be like 11 or 12 years old out here cutting grass, And just imagine if the state found out this guy was out here, like, where's your license to be a groundskeeper or whatever? He's like, come on, he's a kid with his uncle's lawnmower or something like that. It's not that big of a deal, man. Like if I hadn't already hired somebody to do it, I'd let the kid do it. It wouldn't have been that big of a deal. I probably would have paid him twice that, but I gave him $20 just for having the nerve to come and knock on the door and ask. And I do that all the time. A kid come back and say, "Hey, you want your snow shoveled?" Like, yeah, you know what? I'll give you some money just for asking. Because I want you to continue doing that. Continue going out there for yourself. And yes, I am decoupling money from actual work, which is a problem, but it's to motivate. I want you to go out there and keep knocking on these doors because there's going to be people who, older people who are snowed in. I used to be that kid. I didn't get paid for it though. My mama was just like, Miss Sydney down there, she snowed in. I need you to go shovel the snow. You're like, oh shit. I'm out there having a goddamn asthma attack shoveling her snow. I never got paid for that shit. But it was it's not, if a kid needs some pocket money so he can go, doing whatever, get some potato chips or something like that. I don't got no problem with that, man. I want him to go out there and feel encouraged that he can do things himself. Like that's for the best. Like I don't do that shit all the time though. Like there was a chick who I remember I was in a gas station. Women are they're something else. She just started putting her fingers in my hair. Just weird. Oh, if you need somebody to do your hair for you, I'll do it. I was like, girl, get your goddamn hands out of my hair. What the fuck is wrong with you? I was like a black woman at that point. Don't you touch my damn hair. But I was like, nah, I'm straight. Like what the fuck? Like women get very comfortable doing shit, right? It's touching you. Put her goddamn whole goddamn hands in my head though. Like, oh, I like your hair. I'm like, girl, who the hell are you? You need somebody to do your hair for you? I'm like, no, I'll pass. I'll pass because I already know where this is going. It ain't got nothing to do with my goddamn hair. I can tell you that much. I'm not about to be your sugar daddy, baby daddy, or nothing. I'm good on that. You're a hood rat. I can tell you that much. I like my bitches shy. I can tell you that. I like them shy with something to lose. Not, so no. I'm about to let this chick put her hands on my head. No, thank you. Anyway, thank y'all for stopping by for Father's Day, man. Happy Father's Day to all the dads. Everybody else, man, y'all just have a good Juneteenth, and I'll talk to you guys later.